You know, when you think about rebooting an iconic 1980s toy franchise for the modern screen, it's um it's a lot like trying to bake a really delicate high-stakes souffle.
Oh, that is a great way to put it. It really is.
Right, because if you lean too hard into the gritty realism, like you take the mythology way too seriously, the whole thing just collapses under its own depressing weight.
Yeah, nobody wants a grim, brooding action figure movie.
Exactly, but then on the flip side, if you add too much sugar, if you make it completely silly and, self-mocking, it just becomes a total joke and the audience rejects it.
The temperature in the cultural oven has to be absolutely perfect. And that is exactly what Amazon and MGM are attempting with this brand new live-action Masters of the Universe movie.
And welcome to the deep dive, by the way. Today, our mission is to dig into the brand new trailer, along with all the advance notes and review material we have for this film.
And we should establish right up front, this isn't just dumping some recognizable IP onto a streaming service to, pad out a quarterly report. This is a monumental gamble by the studio. They're trying to launch a massive theatrical tentpole franchise here.
Which means the stakes for this specific deep dive are astronomically high. They are walking an incredibly precarious tightrope with this movie.
Oh, absolutely.
Because think about it. On one side of this tightrope, you have the diehard Gen X and older millennial fans.
The ones who grew up clutching those plastic power swords in front of their CRT televisions.
Right, and they hold this lore sacred. But then on the other side, the studio has this monumental task of onboarding a brand new generation of younger kids. Kids who have absolutely no idea who He-Man is.
Or what Eternia is, or why there's a giant green tiger running around.
Exactly. It's a massive generational bridge to build. You have to satisfy that nostalgia without alienating the newcomers who need the whole world explained to them from scratch.
Which is incredibly hard to do.
It is. Now, really quick, before we go any further, if you are listening right now and you are worried about spoilers, just breathe easy.
Yeah, we are keeping this deep dive entirely spoiler-free regarding the ending.
Right. We are not going to ruin the plot for you,
All
but
right.
we are going to comprehensively unpack this movie's vibe, the new trailer footage, some incredibly surprising casting performances, what absolutely works, and, well, what completely misses the mark.
So keeping with your souffle analogy, we really need to look at the recipe the director used to try and pull this off.
Yeah. Based on our sources, exactly what recipe did he use?
Well, the chef in this scenario is director Travis Knight. And what is brilliant about his approach here is that he is essentially just running his Bumblebee playbook.
Okay, for anyone who missed Bumblebee, explain the mechanics of that playbook. Like, why is that relevant to He-Man?
Sure. So think back to the Transformers franchise before Travis Knight got his hands on it,
Oh man, just a bloated, hyperkinetic mess.
right? Aggressively loud, endless cinematic explosions. The core emotional thread was just totally gone. But Knight stepped in and directed Bumblebee as a soft reboot.
Yeah, he really scaled it back.
Exactly. He took this massive plastic-focused property and shrank the emotional scale down. He injected genuine heart into it.
Prioritizing a personal relationship over empty spectacle.
Right, while still honoring that classic 1980s aesthetic. And he is applying that exact same methodology to Masters of the Universe. He is treating the bizarre mythology of Eternia with absolute respect, but he's anchoring it in real emotional resonance.
Okay, let's unpack the aesthetic of that world, because looking at the trailer and the advance notes, the overarching vibe of this film is highly specific.
It really is.
It operates in this fascinating intersection between, like, Flash Gordon and Thor, Ragnarok, and frankly, I love that they completely avoided giving He-Man the Dark Knight treatment.
Oh, me too. I'm so glad they didn't go that route.
Right, because there was a trend for a while where every single reboot had to be desaturated, raining, and just completely miserable.
Yeah, they didn't try to strip away the bright neon colors or the magic or the inherent theatricality just to make it feel, edgy or mature.
But crucially, they did rein it in.
Yes. If we use the modern Thor movies as a spectrum for tone, this movie sits comfortably at the Ragnarok end of the scale.
Colorful, fun, aware of its own absurdity.
Exactly. But it successfully avoids crossing the line into the overly goofy, self-parody territory of something like, say, Thor, Love and Thunder.
Right, where the characters basically stop taking their own survival seriously.
Yeah, that completely breaks the tension. And The soundtrack really cements that tone here, too.
Oh, wow. Yeah, we have to talk about the soundtrack. They lean heavily into arena rock,
Yes, Major Queen and Freddie Mercury energy.
which feels like a deliberate nod, right? Considering Queen composed the legendary 1980 Flash Gordon soundtrack.
Definitely a homage.
Eh.
And they even utilized the title song from the movie Highlander in this.
That is just pure, unadulterated 1980s epic fantasy energy.
It is. That arena rock bombast perfectly matches a universe where a man holds a magical sword to the sky and gets struck by lightning.
But okay, I have to push back a little here because modern superhero and fantasy movies, they sometimes use this exact kind of comedy and campiness as a crutch.
How do you mean?
Well, sincerity is terrifying for a filmmaker today. If you are completely sincere and you fail, you get mocked. But if you are constantly winking at the audience, you can pretend you weren't trying to be serious in the first place.
Ah, right, the defensive irony.
Yeah. So does leaning into that Flash Gordon campiness undermine the actual concrete world building they need to do for a multi-film franchise?
That is the ultimate danger of the genre, for sure. If you wink too hard, the audience just stops caring if the hero lives or dies.
Right.
But based on the reviews, the campiness here functions as a stylistic overlay, not a structural foundation. The foundation itself is remarkably solid, though they do take a significant structural risk in the first act to establish that world building.
Okay, right, because you have to introduce this wild cosmic lore to the uninitiated.
Exactly.
Mhm.
To solve this, the first part of the movie is heavily Earth-based. It functions as a crash course to explain the rules to brand new viewers.
So if you're a millennial parent taking your 10-year-old kid, this section is designed specifically so your kid isn't hopelessly lost later on.
Yes. But we should be completely honest about the flaw in this structural choice. This Earth-based opening definitely drags.
Yeah, the pacing stumbles a bit.
It does. Because they are doing so much heavy lifting with the exposition, some of the jokes in this section simply do not land. It feels a bit like you were trapped in a waiting room.
It's like being forced to sit down and read the entire dense instruction manual before you are actually allowed to open the box and play with the toys.
That is the perfect way to look at it.
It's clunky, it feels like homework, but you and the movie have to get through it before it's finally allowed to just completely dive into the toy bin and go crazy.
Yeah, exactly. But while we can critique the pacing of that first act, it achieves a massive critical triumph. It successfully avoids what industry insiders call the Smurf Dracula problem.
The Smurf Dracula problem. I absolutely love this concept, but explain exactly how that mechanism works for anyone who hasn't heard the term.
Okay, so it refers to a super frustrating trope in modern Hollywood IP reboots. Filmmakers often make the audience wait forever for the core premise to actually happen.
Right, like teasing it out endlessly.
Exactly. Think of the 2011 Smurfs movie, where they spend most of the runtime in real-world New York instead of their magical village, or the movie Dracula Untold, where the hero doesn't actually get his vampire fangs until the very end of the movie.
Which is just awful.
The studio note is usually, we have to build anticipation by withholding the iconic suit or the iconic transformation. They tease it out until the third act to save money on CGI or to artificially extend the origin story.
Which is infuriating for the viewer. I mean, you bought a ticket for He-Man. You don't want to wait 90 minutes to actually see He-Man.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And this movie refuses to fall into that trap. Adam transforms into He-Man surprisingly early in the film.
Oh, thank goodness.
Yeah, they realize you don't build anticipation by withholding the premise. You build it by delivering the hero early and then escalating the threats against him.
That is such a relief. And once the adult version of Teela shows up and the narrative transitions fully away from Earth and back to the magical planet of Eternia, from what I've seen in the trailer and the notes, the film just completely hits its stride.
It really does. It does that incredibly rare thing for a modern blockbuster where it gets significantly better, tighter, and more visually interesting the further along it goes.
It builds narrative momentum rather than losing steam in some messy CGI finale.
Yes, and a huge part of why that momentum works is because of how the actors ground the characters once we reach Eternia.
Yeah.
They elevate them from plastic action figures into actual people.
And the casting is where this gets really, really fascinating. Nicholas Galitzine plays both Prince Adam and He-Man. Now, historically, the temptation for a studio casting He-Man is just to find a giant, veiny professional wrestler or a bodybuilder, oil them up, and have them shout catchphrases.
Basically, yeah.
But Travis Knight explicitly rejected that. Galitzine plays Adam as a deeply layered, fully formed character.
It is a brilliant pivot. He is clearly drawing inspiration from the early 2000s cartoon Reboot and the recent Netflix series.
Both of which were great.
Yeah, both of which treated Adam not just as a secret identity, but as a young man grappling with the immense burden of power. Because of that choice, there is just as much narrative focus on Adam as there is on He-Man in this movie.
But playing a dual identity like that is notoriously difficult, right? You have one persona who is this towering, invincible, magical god, and the other who is a regular, somewhat vulnerable guy.
And usually the regular guy is just a boring placeholder.
Exactly. So do you actually care about Prince Adam here, or are you just sitting in the theater tapping your watch, waiting for the magical lightning to strike so the CGI muscles take over?
The reviews say you absolutely end up caring about Adam. By giving him distinct anxieties, humor, and a fleshed-out personality, the audience invests in his personal journey.
Okay, that's great.
You aren't just waiting for the spectacle of He-Man. You are emotionally invested in the mortal man wielding the sword.
And the payoff for that emotional investment is apparently massive. The transformation scenes from Adam to He-Man are said to be the absolute biggest crowd pleasers of the entire film.
I believe it.
They generate massive vocal reactions in the theater because the contrast between the vulnerable kid and the cosmic hero actually feels earned.
And that emotional grounding also extends to his co-star. Camilla Mendes plays Teela. Now, most of the audience will know her from the teen soap opera Riverdale.
Right.
But she transitions here into a surprisingly formidable, highly capable action star.
She looks fantastic in the trailer, and the chemistry between her and Galitzine is electric.
Yeah, they lean into this sexual tension dynamic that really honors the romance from the 2002 animated series.
But what's really smart is that because this is an origin story, they don't rush the romance. They let the tension simmer, leaving plenty of runway for their relationship to grow organically in future sequels.
Chemistry is the unseen special effect that holds these massive green screen blockbusters together.
Oh, absolutely.
If you don't genuinely buy the relationship between Adam and Teela, if you don't believe they care about each other, then the stakes of the world ending just don't matter. The actors have to sell the reality of the room when the room itself is basically just a giant blue wall.
Which brings us to the villains. Because a hero is only as compelling as the villain forcing them to act.
Very true.
And this leads us to arguably the most surprising casting success of the entire film, and to be fair, one truly bizarre character choice that we have to talk about. But let's start with the elephant in the room.
Yes. We absolutely must discuss Jared Leto as Skeletor.
We do, because when this casting was announced, the internet just collectively groaned.
Oh, there's so much fear.
Jared Leto has had a notoriously rough run with comic book and franchise movies lately. People were terrified he was going to bomb or give us a bizarre, self-indulgent performance reminiscent of some recent heavily memed flops.
Where you took a ridiculous premise way too seriously.
Exactly. It was the most highly scrutinized casting choice of the entire production. But the verdict is in, and it is a massive collective sigh of relief. He is incredibly good.
It's amazing. He steals the movie.
He does. And here's the mechanical reason why it works. You never actually see Jared Leto's real face.
Right.
He is entirely enclosed inside the skull mask. If you didn't read the opening credits or follow the Hollywood trades, you genuinely wouldn't even know it was him.
He completely abandons his usual persona.
Yes. He channels the classic, cackling, theatrical 1980s cartoon Skeletor perfectly. His comedic timing is razor-sharp, and his jokes are getting the biggest laughs in the theater.
It is such a fascinating case study in the nature of acting. When you take away an actor's face, which is their primary tool for generating micro-expressions and communicating with the audience, you force them to adapt.
I actually have a theory about this. Let's call it the Leto IP curse.
Okay, let's hear it.
Historically, when he is hired to be the unmasked physical face of a massive franchise, his vanity or his intense method acting process seems to get in the way of just telling a fun story.
That tracks.
But when you put him completely behind a rigid mask, entirely removing his physical face from the equation, it ironically frees him. It strips away the vanity.
Ah, I see.
He is forced to rely purely on vocal nuance, timing, and exaggerated physical body language. And that restriction essentially birthed a remarkably uninhibited, joyous performance that saves the character.
I think your theory's spot on. For a character as inherently theatrical and ridiculous as a muscular man with a floating skull for a head, that physical restriction forces the actor to match the absurdity of the design.
It totally works. And right by his side is Alison Brie playing his second-in-command, Evil-Lyn.
Yes.
Now, I wouldn't have instantly pegged a comedic actress like her for an action fantasy villain, but she is fantastic.
She showcases brilliant comedic timing, playing the exasperated straight woman to Leto's totally unhinged Skeletor.
They are a genuinely hilarious dynamic duo.
And the supporting heroes are having just as much fun leaning into the tone. Idris Elba plays Man-at-Arms, the veteran warrior and mentor.
He looks great in the trailer.
You watch him on screen here, and he looks like he's having infinitely more fun than he ever did playing this stoic, serious Heimdall in the Marvel movies for all those years.
Oh, for sure.
He completely understood the assignment. He knows exactly what kind of movie he is in.
You can always feel that energy through the screen. When an actor is happy to be on set, the audience is happy to watch them. But we do have to talk about the misstep. There is one distinct flaw in the supporting cast.
Yes, there is one acting choice that completely breaks the immersion.
Jace Purefoy plays King Rander, who is Prince Adam's father. And for some entirely inexplicable reason, he adopts an incredibly bizarre accent for the role.
It is so weird.
The critics literally joked that Robert Pattinson, who is famous for doing wild, unhinged accents in his indie movies, would be impressed by how weird this choice is.
Which is such an odd, unnecessary complication.
That's great.
I mean, James Purefoy is an acclaimed British actor with a naturally rich, commanding Shakespearean voice.
Right.
It is tailor-made for playing a fantasy king. Why not just let him use his actual voice?
The prevailing theory is that the director probably didn't want King Rander to be the only British-sounding character on the planet Eternia, worrying it might sound out of place.
So they made him change it to sound more geographically ambiguous.
Yeah. But honestly, in a movie featuring a magical power sword, a skull-faced wizard, and a giant talking green tiger, I absolutely promise you no one in the audience would have cared if the king sounded a little bit British.
It is a classic case of overthinking a minor detail while ignoring how distracting the solution is.
Yeah.
But hey, speaking of that giant talking green tiger, we cannot overlook what is easily the ultimate fan service win in this movie.
Oh, Kringer.
Yes, Kringer.
I love the execution of this. So there are actually two distinct versions of Kringer in the film. We get baby Kringer and adult Kringer, and they are voiced by two different actors, Tom Wilton and Fletcher Glenn.
And adult Kringer gets some highly meta, self-aware dialogue that really lands without breaking the reality of the world.
And beyond the dialogue, there is a fascinating behind-the-scenes meta-narrative about how Amazon and MGM handled the marketing and the studio logo itself.
This is such a smart business move.
It really is. So originally, the early trailers just featured the standard, classic, roaring MGM lion before the footage started.
Right.
But fans spoke up online saying it was a missed opportunity, and incredibly, the studio actually listened to them.
They went back and changed the studio logo at the very start of the actual film to feature Kringer roaring instead of the lion.
I mean, in an era where audiences often view studios as faceless, cynical corporations just churning out content, that kind of gesture really matters.
Oh, totally. Taking the time and budget to animate Kringer over the MGM logo is a brilliant, easy slam dunk.
It immediately disarms a skeptical fan base before the first frame of the movie even rolls.
It signals to the audience, we hear you, we respect the history of this material, and we are here to have fun.
It sets the perfect tone. Which brings us to the climax of the film. We established earlier that the Earth-based subplots in the first act were a bit clunky, right? Like reading an instruction manual.
Right.
But the climax features a very meta, incredibly trippy final battle between He-Man and Skeletor that somehow retroactively justifies all those earlier Earth-based scenes.
The grounded human emotional lessons they learned on Earth become the anchor that gives this wild, cosmic CGI battle actual weight. It ties the whole narrative together.
And visually, this final battle is where the movie really had to prove its worth. The CGI required to render the magic and landscapes of Eternia is incredibly heavy.
But it looks genuinely fantastic. It avoids turning into that muddy, weightless green screen mess where the actors look like they are floating in a video game cutscene.
Like what we've seen in recent blockbusters, like Ant-Man, Quantumania.
Exactly. The lighting here is coherent, the physical environments feel tactile, and the action is visually striking.
Furthermore, the world building they accomplished during this climax is handled with incredible care.
Yeah, the lore additions they introduce aren't just lazy retcons designed to overwrite what fans already love.
Instead, they organically pulled deep-cut references from the very early 1980s mini-comics and animated episodes.
They are meticulously expanding the mythology to set up a massive, sprawling toy box for the sequel without disrespecting the original canon.
So, as someone who analyzes the architecture of these big franchises, I have to ask you a critical question.
Okay, lay it on me.
We see so many movies these days that completely forget to be a good movie first because they are so desperately busy setting up a cinematic universe, they feel like glorified trailers.
Yeah, it's exhausting.
Did this Masters of the Universe reboot actually stick the landing on its own merits, or is it just a 2-hour, $200 million commercial for part 2?
It manages to avoid the trap. It really prioritizes the story at hand.
No, that's good.
It sticks the landing specifically because the emotional core of the film, the internal struggle of Adam accepting the mantle of He-Man and the external rivalry with Skeletor, is resolved in a deeply satisfying way before the credits roll.
Because it tells a complete emotional story, it actually earns its sequel teases rather than just cynically relying on them to keep you hooked.
Exactly.
And speaking of those teases, a quick but vital public service announcement for you when you go see this in the theater. Stay in your seats. Do not leave when the credits start rolling.
Yeah, there are 2 post-credit scenes.
The first one is a really funny retro nod to the classic cartoon that will get a big laugh. But the second one, it is a massive, earth-shattering canonical tease that blows the doors wide open for the sequel.
So if we synthesize everything we've unpacked today, the final verdict is remarkably positive. Yes, it requires you to sit through a clunky Earthbound start.
And yes, you have to endure one profoundly weird accent from King Randor.
But ultimately, this attempt to reboot Masters of the Universe absolutely succeeds.
It really does. By leaning fearlessly into that colorful, bombastic Flash Gordon aesthetic, and by totally nailing the emotional duality of Adam and He-Man with Nicholas Galitzine.
And by stripping away Jared Leto's vanity and letting him just have an absolute blast behind the Skeletor mask.
Travis Knight has built something genuinely special. He created a movie with real heart that manages to thread an impossible needle, delivering a satisfying experience for the long time, nostalgic fans while being totally accessible for newcomers.
It is a profound testament to understanding the core appeal of your source material. You don't have to make a world dark, miserable, or cynical to make it meaningful.
Exactly. And that leaves us with a final thought I really want you to mull over today. Think about this. If an old 1980s property, something that was essentially created by executives as a 30-minute television commercial just to sell plastic action figures to children,
Right.
if that can be successfully reinvented today with genuine heart, self-aware meta-humor, and high-budget storytelling, what does that say about our modern era of pop culture?
It raises a fascinating question about what audiences are truly craving right now and what we feel is missing from modern storytelling.
Are we just so exhausted by the relentless cynicism of the real world that we have to look backward for our heroes? Do we have to return to a magical man with a giant sword, a skull-faced villain, and a talking green tiger just to feel a sense of pure, unadulterated cinematic joy?
It's definitely something to think about the next time you find yourself sitting in a dark movie theater, cheering at the screen.
Keep asking questions, keep critically exploring the media you consume, and we will catch you on the next Deep Dive.